So that's why we've got some empty seats, but when they get here, we're just going to go ahead and have them sit down. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our chairman, Tom Warsh.
Thanks, Jessica. My name is Tom Warsh. I'm chairman of the Jackson County Democratic Committee. We felt it was important to try and get a lot of our state representatives, both in the state Senate and state House, to come together and talk about the important issues that are going to be dealt with in September at the veto session. Some of these bills that the governor vetoed, we praise the governor for doing so, and they'll explain why. So without, I'm going to introduce Senator Kiki Curls, who will introduce her colleagues. Wait, it doesn't have a long wire.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So I'm Senator Kiki Curls, and you happen to be sitting in the middle of the 9th Senatorial District, which happens to be my district. Yay. So with us this evening, of course, we have Senator Jolie Justice. Yay. And Joe, please forgive me. I got nervous. And Representative Joe Runyon here in Kansas City. So he's actually in Raytown, if I'm not mistaken. Grandview. Joe, this is bad. Please forgive me, Joe. Grandview. He was a Grandview City Councilman, and I know that. So we are very happy to have you here this evening. As he said previously, we have a few of our colleagues that will be coming very shortly. I know Senator Vola is on his way. I know Representative Gail McCann-Beatty is coming also and will be coming late from a meeting as well. So I believe we'll go ahead and start our general discussion.
Basically what we'd like, there's a lot of bills, a list of bills that have been vetoed. What we'd like to do is maybe if each of you can talk about the ones that are important to you that the governor vetoed, and then maybe collectively you can give all of your opinions on why you think it was a good idea to veto, or if there's some that you don't agree with the veto, let us know why also, and we'll go from there.
All right. Can everybody hear me okay here? All right, we'll just stay seated then.
I'll have to move the camera because it's focused on the podium.
Here we go.
All right. Go ahead.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get this underway. So this was kind of a banner year in Jefferson City for the number of vetoes. My understanding was it 29 or 30? It was 29 vetoes that Governor Nixon had made this year, and it's my understanding that that's more vetoes than there's ever been. And I would like to say, first of all, thank goodness for Governor Nixon. As many of you know, my name is Jolie Justice, and I am a state senator formerly from Kansas City. It's kind of strange. Redistricting has actually moved the 10th district, which was here in Kansas City, all the way across the other side of the state. So I now actually represent the people of Callaway, Audrain, Monroe, Montgomery, Warren, and Lincoln counties. That's 6 Republican rural counties in northeast Missouri, and they love me there. Yeah, they love me there. And the reason that I was willing to do that, and a lot of people are like, why on earth would you put up with something like that? The reason I was willing to do that is I'm termed out. I only have a year and a half left, so I won't be in office after the end of 2014. And when they came and pitched this idea to me, they said that we needed to get it done because the Senate at the time, there were only 8 Democrats in it. And so we have 34 senators and only 8 of us were Democrats. By making this move, we were automatically going to go to 9. We were going to wipe one Tea Party senator completely off the map. She was just going to disappear, which everyone was pretty excited about. And then there were going to be other seats that were going to become easier for us to pick up in future election cycles. And it was kind of interesting because it wasn't just Democrats who came up with that plan. It was 5 Republicans and 5 Democrats. And they sat down and decided that making that sort of move was beneficial for the entire state because it meant we were going to have more moderate folks in the Senate and less of this sort of extremism. I bring that up because we are still in the middle of a legislature that is filled with extremists. And while we are slowly starting to climb out of that, if you see the bills that were passed this year, you can see we still have a lot of extremists in the legislature. And they pass things that, frankly, the majority of Missourians are not interested in. The other role that I have in the Missouri State Senate is I'm the minority leader, which means that I am the leader of the Democrats. Senator Curls is my assistant minority leader. And together we have to make a lot of the decisions on what bills we're going to let come to a vote, what bills we're going to filibuster, and what bills at some point we're going to have to sit down and just try to negotiate the best possible scenario because we are so outnumbered. The problem with the Missouri Senate right now is we are in the extreme minority still, even with the seats that we've picked up. We're up to 10 now. But we can still have our filibuster, which is our only way to stop some of these things from happening. We can still have our filibuster cut short by the Republicans through a procedure called moving for the previous question, which is kind of like cloture in the United States Senate. And because of that, a lot of their ideas that they want to shove through get shoved through. And that's why it's so important that we have the governor, because Senator Curls and I were able to make some strategic decisions about letting some things through, knowing that our governor would veto them. Some things we were able to stop dead in their tracks, and then other things we were able to mitigate the damage so that they were less bad. Now the fun begins, because now we've got a majority Republican legislature who's going to be looking at trying to override many of those vetoes. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. I'm going to stop, though, because we have one of our awesome Kansas City delegation who just joined us. Would you like to introduce yourself, Representative?
Before I say anything, I'd like to say all praise, honor, and glory be to God. I'm Brandon Ellington. I represent the 22nd District, which is 47th Street down to Truman Road, Truce, all the way over to Starling Road in Independence, Missouri.
So we were going over some of the bills that the governor vetoed, and I think some of the ones that we probably should talk about first are the ones that have the most possibility of being overridden. So let's first talk about the tax increase. Well, it is a tax increase for some folks. And that many folks are calling it a tax cut. So this is a bill that when originally went through the legislature was proposed as a broad-based tax cut for all Missourians. And the way they were going to pay for it was by instituting a 1-cent sales tax increase on everybody else. That bill eventually kind of fizzled out because the governor and the Democratic Party pointed out to everyone that, yeah, you're giving some tax breaks to a lot of folks who are, pretty high income, but you're paying for those tax breaks by a 1-cent sales tax, which is regressive. Because all of us that are on fixed incomes, whether you've got someone who is on disability or you've got a senior, many students that are living, at or below the poverty level, they have to pay the same thing for a box of Kleenex that a person who makes $500,000 a year does. And so a 1-cent sales tax on that person is going to be much more difficult to cover than would be someone who's wealthy. So that bill kind of fizzled out, and they kind of scrapped together at the last minute a compromise, which frankly has turned out to be almost as bad, if not worse, than the original. Some of the things that they have that are a problem with this, and I think first and foremost, is just the fiscal note, which is how much this thing's supposed to cost the state of Missouri, is all over the map. We've got them saying that, it's only going to be a few $100 million over the course of several years. But if you really look at the math and you do it and you sit down and you're very sensible about it, it's going to cost the state hundreds of millions of dollars that we don't have. And where's that going to come out of? It's going to come out of our schools and our roads and our services that we've already cut down to the bone. So for those reasons alone, I think that this veto should stand. But there are several other reasons, and we're going to go ahead and jump into those here in a minute. But first, I would like everyone to welcome State Senator Paul Ravoda.
Hi, everybody. I can't believe Representative Ellington beat me here.
He knows his way around this program.
So there are a few other things that I want to bring up about this tax cut. A lot of folks are saying that, but this tax cut is for everybody. It's not just for the wealthy. You know what? That may be true, but let me put it to you this way. For a family of 3 that makes an average salary, let's say $30,000 a year, your tax cut is going to be about $16 a year, I believe is what I've been told. On the other hand, if you're an individual who makes $500,000 or more a year, your tax cut's going to be near $5,000. Now, the thing that's frustrating about that, first and foremost, is that the folks who, can afford this thing the least, which are those of us that need a lot of the vital services like healthcare and roads and education, we're going to be the ones that are paying for this by cuts to services. But at the same time, we're only going to get a tiny little bit. I mean, $16, that's not much. On the flip side, they've got folks saying, well, the reason we need to give the larger cut to the wealthier people is so they can create jobs. Yeah. I'm not sure what kind of job you create for $5,000 extra a year. But in my experience, I've never met anyone who's able to create a single job with $5,000. It just doesn't make any sense. So their math is fuzzy, their logic is wrong, and then on top of it, there's a bunch of other things in there that are just because of sloppy, last-minute bill writing. They're actually going to increase, and for the first time, put a sales tax on pharmaceuticals, on prescription drugs. And on top of that, textbook sales are going to be taxed. And that was frankly because of sloppy drafting on part of the folks that were trying to throw this thing together. They say they're doing it so that we can compete with Kansas. In my opinion, that's not how you compete with Kansas. And in my opinion, we're doing way better than Kansas already, and there's no reason for us to go down that road. So for those reasons, my hope is that we will be able to sustain this veto and that will not be overridden. On the Senate side, if it were to happen just on that side, it would probably be overridden because we're still outnumbered 24-10. On the House side, it's a different situation. They have to have 109, is that right? 109 folks to override this veto. They didn't even have that many people vote for it the first time, and they've got some folks who are on the fence waffling about it. I'm going to stop talking about this bill now. It's House Bill 253 because I want other folks to chime in about that bill and some of the other bills that they think are going to be important during the veto session.
Well, and I just want to quickly piggyback on this Bill 253 thing. I think that's the one that most of us have heard the most about. And I think, we heard Senator Justice say earlier that it's just fiscally irresponsible. And we talk about a price tag of about $800 million. That's almost $1 billion, cut to our economy. And we'll talk about, to bring drastic cuts, of course, to education and social services and infrastructure and all those other things. And a $200 million increase to those who take prescription medications is something that's completely unacceptable. So when we talk about that $800 million price tag, I think I heard that it was somewhat equal to maybe closing all of the state prisons around the state, completely getting rid of the Department of Mental Health, and cutting all funding that we currently have to all colleges and universities. So that's a huge price tag on our state, and it's too much really for us to risk. I mean, luckily, as Joey also said, I think they're going to have problems maybe with the override over in the House. So that's what we're hoping, and that's where I think we'll probably be. But of course, as we know, things change so much week to week, of course, in politics and certainly state politics. But I'm hoping that override is one, of course, that we'll be able to sustain as well.
Okay. So much I can talk about. 253, we all know it's a bad bill. When you talk about the tax bill, we've seen the commercials where they're talking about grow the economy. Commercials, even bad commercials. They haven't put a good enough thought in trying to persuade people. We have another bill that's coming up that I think we should kind of discuss, and that's the insurance bill. Right now, if I'm an uninsured motorist and I get in an accident, the insured motorist is a responsible party, and the insured motorist has to compensate. Underneath this new law, if we override the veto, the uninsured motorists will not get compensated if they don't have insurance and they're not at fault in an accident. I think this is something that doesn't actually bring fairness to the process, even though you're supposed to have insurance. You have somebody that's 17 and has a lifetime injury, and just because they were 17 and they were young and they didn't have insurance, so this person be not have the same rights as somebody that's fully insured. That's one bill that I definitely think we should kind of discuss. Another bill that I hope's not going anywhere and that wasn't fully thought out was the gun bill. We want to nullify all federal gun laws, even though we have a supremacy clause, that we're not an independent state, we're part of the federal government. It's unconstitutional. We passed it. It's unconstitutional. Totally ridiculous bill. There's so many bad bills that came out of the state. Which one do y'all want me to start on? Let the senator go.
State Senator Paul Lavoda represent the other side of 435, basically, to eastern Jackson County, northeastern Jackson County. Glad to be here. I guess I'll add a little bit about House Bill 253. Believe it or not, it was worse when it started. And it started as a bill in the Ways and Means Committee in the Senate, Senate Bill 29 or 29? 26. I always get that one in the paycheck deception numbers. But that made it, the current bill has a 10-year time period where it goes in. This made it almost immediate and then added a 2% sales tax to pay for it, which is a regressive tax. Thanks to our minority leader, we fought that bill, watered it down, got it over the House, and they defeated it. And the reason it's such sloppy language is because then when this 253 came to the Senate, Senator Krause just threw out this new bill and substituted it out. So it wasn't thought out at all. It wasn't a fiscal note and all this stuff. And it's all because a radical agenda has taken over the Capitol. So when you look at guns, as Representative talked about, but you really look at this idea that the rich need to get richer and the poor need to fend for themselves, that's really the attitude of House Bill 253. Because it takes away those basic services, the basic money that we get for services like education. And by the way, we're not funding education all the way through our foundation formula. It would just take away those things. So that's why you've seen an unprecedented campaign by the governor to say that we need to keep his veto. I don't know if anyone else remembers such a big to-do about a veto. But this is why it's important that we have a Democratic governor to stand up for these type of values, and that we have good people in the legislature like Gad here tonight that will fight for these things ongoing. This is the bill is in a directly was presented as a response to what Kansas did. And I continually said, we need to be the show me state, not the me too state. Kansas is going to have trouble with their own funding of education and other things. We've seen, those of us live in this area know that people have moved to Kansas. Why? Good schools, good roads, good basic services over there. That's going to end for them. And we do not want to follow them over the cliff. And if this national, radical plot to make the rich richer continues, we're going to go down the same road. So that's going to be the big thing in the veto session. That I feel confident the House will do the right thing and keep the governor's veto, so us in the Senate won't see it. But it really is a very impactful thing. And if you're wondering why there's so much talk about it, it really does rise to that level. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff as a representative.
And along that line, we can't go back and fix it if we don't like it. We have to take any tax increases, sales tax, whatever, to the vote. So it's not going to get fixed if we have this, if it's a disaster. Hopefully it'll never pass. The other thing I represent, I think it's 4 school districts, and on the minimum side, they're going to lose about $10 to $12 million a year. On the high side, it's over $20 million a year in funding from the state. So that's a disaster again.
Have you heard from the school districts?
There is not a school district that they want it to kill.
And have they had any influence with their particular representatives or senators that, like I live in Blue Springs.
All right, I went to
so I have Republicans galore there.
The governor came to the Lee Summit one.
Uh-huh.
I was there. I was probably the only, and I'm the only Democrat in the House representing part of Lee Summit or Cass County. But I don't think so. I don't think they're going to move. The only one, Grismore might. Grismore's, yeah, he's turned out. He's a little bit. The rest of them, no. Because I talked to Sheila, which you got her also.
Yes.
She told me the other day she's not.
And she once in a while will throw a vote for Democrats.
Yes, but not on this. So call.
I should be there.
And part of the, you had a question.
Are the superintendents talking to the
parents. I mean, I don't think it's getting past the superintendents.
I think most school districts sent out a letter first day of school telling them how bad this was. So you guys have got the students.
The only thing is the first day of school is
School
crazy.
district on back to school night, there was a fact sheet, the white sheet that was handed out to elementary school age parents. There wasn't anything at the high school level, but there was at the elementary school level. So.
I would actually say no, in particular in my district. There was one school board member that had a sheet of paper that wasn't 100% accurate when we talked about what the taxes were doing, what they wouldn't do. Now, this wasn't this individual's fault because he fully didn't understand what the complications or the implications that this bill would have. I think that as a state rep and working with the senators, we have to do a better job of getting information out there to the entities that can pass it out so people can fully understand what this tax cut looks like. Because when I talk to people, they see the commercials, they talk about the tax cut. They don't understand how much the schools are going to lose. They don't understand what a terrible job we have done as a legislative body as funding vital things like education, healthcare, etc., like some of the things that we talked about. They also don't understand the variance between an $800 million tax cut or $900 million tax cut, and then the body said that we don't have $800 million to have universal health care.
So, have you guys received any phone calls from various school districts?
I have been barraged by the Independent School District
Okay.
and parts of the Lee Summit. I think the Independents has especially done a good job.
Okay.
And the good news is I'm on the right side of the issue on that.
True.
The even better news is that we have two Republican representatives who have some of those districts, Representative Torpy, Representative Searpoint, who are really getting beat up by teachers and parents, and it will be a very
So do you
interesting
think
story.
that will sway them to vote right
I don't
now?
know if we'll sway them, and I'd like to know the House's opinion on this, because from my understanding, if you look at the numbers, it'll be difficult to pass, but the boss, Rex Stringfield of the Republican Party, wants a vote, and the Speaker's going to make a vote, and it will put some of the Republicans in a jam. Either they're going to face a primary from a more radical Republican, or they're going to face a Democrat. And I say, good, let's have a vote, and let's see that they don't actually care about education. And some of these suburban guys whose claims they do, we can call them out next election.
Because, Blue Springs is huge on education.
Dr. Kinder's really kind of been the leader on it.
They've prided themselves for years on, we've never had a bond failure pass, yada, 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 yada. And I don't have kids in school anymore, so I don't have that first-hand line. So I just...
when the governor came to Lee Summit, it was, and I'm not remembering his name right now, the superintendent of Lee Summit, he's really led the way publicly in the paper, criticizing Senator Krause. The new superintendent, Dr. Hurl of Independence has, and Dr. Kinder has, of course, and Fort Osage as well. So hopefully it's not only kills a destructive bill, but maybe some political points in the future.
It would be good. In the rural area, or in your area?
I was just wondering that. So, it very well could be that my 6 counties and however many school districts are in those 6 counties are slamming my office in Jefferson City right now. I don't know the answer because my staff takes the first stab at everything, and they're probably just saying to them, oh yeah, she's totally on board with you. Thank you for your call. I mean, and then it never filters down to me because there's no, follow-up. They don't ask me to come speak, to their PTA meeting or anything like that. So I do know in a lot of rural areas, though, that they are hitting them hard because I have friends that are legislators in rural areas that are getting beat up. Southwest Missouri in particular, the senators down there they're in an awful place, and they don't want the bill to come over from the House because they don't want to have to vote for the override. That's how skittish the senators are. And then it's a very real thing, though, that Senator LaVota just brought up, which is this Rex Stringfield has threatened to put a primary opponent against every Republican that votes against an override on this veto. And that is a very scary thing for a man who has limitless cash to say, I am going to put an opponent in who is going to beat you in your next primary. And for a House of Representatives person, that's every 2 years. That's a very scary thing. And so you may see some Senate or some representatives who have been on the fence or even been no votes switch their votes because of that fear.
Right. And one of the representatives in your district that's running for your seat there, he voted for it. He's a Democrat, but he voted for it. He is going to vote against it.
My question is, have we made a bill amount this time? Is the public aware of where the money's coming from and who's initiating this great big move? Because this man has lots of money. This is only going to profit him. So my question is, have we made him the villain?
I think that we all make him a villain. I think that the editorial boards make him a villain. But the reality is that we don't have $1 billion to put TV ads on to tell the general public that he's a villain.
Is there any progress with like ethics reform, reducing the amount of reform?
So the question was if there'd been any progress with ethics reform, so that we could try to stem some of this. And the answer is no. We had about how long was that discussion on the Senate floor? 5 minutes?
5 minutes tops.
Yeah, so they brought up the one bill this year, and it was in the evening, and it was clear it wasn't going to go anywhere because how late in session it was. And he talked about it for about 10 minutes, and it was only in the context of lobbying, I think. And I stood up and offered an amendment to put caps back on, and the Republican pulled his bill off the floor, and that was the end of the discussion.
But even
has no limits on contribution. I mean,
We're not the only state, but we're the Wild West.
Well, and let me say this. When we talk about Rex Singfield and the ethics reform, he was still around when we had campaign contribution limits, but he had about 100 PACs. So he would just max out of every PAC, and in some races, he was still able to give almost $100,000 for those races. So if it means that he has to open up 200 PACs, he will. So I don't know if that's going to be the solution for this particular problem, just because of the resources that he has and how he's able to do it. But
because he seems almost unstoppable.
Oh, it's a very scary thing, though, and it is terrible that at this point that we would basically be almost buying the political process in some ways. I mean, but he has lots of money, and that's a very real fear for some of the legislators, especially on the House side that run every 2 years, to have that fear that they're going to have a primary opponent if they vote, against the override. So.
And I'd like to bring up at this minute, it's not really on topic here, but one thing that we have to look at as Democrats and as concerned citizens is reform of how things get to the ballot when it comes to initiative petitions or constitutional amendments. Because so far, Rex Singfield has not been successful in getting anything through the legislature, no matter how much money he has spent on candidates. He still has not gotten anything through the legislature. So what's he do? He goes around the legislature and puts something on the ballot through the initiative petition process. And that's really scary because that costs about $1 million, and he's got lots of millions of dollars. And so one of the things that we need to be doing, and we have allies that are Republicans, we have allies that are, from all across the board who would be with us on this, on making some common sense restrictions on how you put things on the ballot so that we can make sure he doesn't buy his way around the legislature when he fails to get success in the legislature.
I want to make a comment, not necessarily on Rex, but since we're talking about money, bills that are being presented, we need to be honest about Rex Singfield. He is a millionaire, puts a lot of money in, and we also need to be honest about Alex, which is the American Legislative Exchange Council. Because a lot of the bills that we see come before Missouri are directly tied to Alex. Voter ID, workforce discrimination, paycheck deception bill, a lot of these tax cut bills that we have, some of the corporate bills that we have that would cut some of the regulations for their companies. These are all directly related to Alex. When we look around the states, at the various 50 states, we see similar bills being introduced in the legislature, and we don't do anything to fight to answer your question as far as having villain, making somebody a villain or making an entity a villain. Because when I say Alex, most of the people in here probably don't even know what I'm talking about.
Right.
Yeah, but that's only if we seriously pay attention. The same when we talk about Rex Singfield. Most of the people don't know who he's tied to. We see some of the people that he's tied to on KCP TV on the weekend show promoting some of this same propaganda. But we don't know the direct correlation that's tied into the legislative body. And the same with the ethics. I think that's chasing the ghost. Because you can have ethics reforms where you can say, I can't donate more than $1,000 or I can't donate X, Y, and Z. But politics is war without bloodshed. And war is bloody politics, right? So in war, you do everything that you can do to win. But like the senator said, you will see various PACs be created. You will see various candidates ran against somebody that has no chance of winning, only to split the vote so I can get a puppet in there that's going to do what I want to do. It comes from having a true understanding of what's going on and how the bills are actually going to affect people.
So Brandon talked about ALEC, and ALEC is he said it's the American Legislative Exchange Council, which is a conservative legislative conference that many of the legislators attend yearly. So for those that didn't know, I mean, it's one, he said, that a lot of the very conservative legislation that we see at the state typically comes from those conferences. And so, that he's very correct in his assessment of the legislation that we see that actually, comes from ALEC and some of those other conservative legislative conferences that are part.
And I would add this, that I know there's some folks here who've been doing politics for a long time. And in the past, we would talk about the Republican right, Democratic left. That's all gone in Jefferson City. Now it's insane people with a radical agenda and others. And we're the other people. And if you look at the 10 of us in the Senate, you have really a wide range of opinions and backgrounds, and we're a very small caucus, and it's even more diverse in the House. But they've really moved to a really radical, ALEC-driven, rich corporation bought agenda. And I think people still look at this stuff like, well, that's just Democrat, Republican. No, it's a radical agenda versus regular middle class people who are trying to educate their kids and have a good job. And I think we should talk in terms of that a little bit more, because and if you're not aware of it, look a little bit deeper, because it really has become that distinct. That's why the governor has vetoed so many bills. Yeah. And he has really gone through and the gun bill is just simply not constitutional. But that's okay. They don't care. It's radical enough to the Tea Party base of the Republican Party will go for it, and that's all they care about.
Let me tell you something about this gun bill. Two things about this gun bill. Number one, when this gun bill was nearing the governor's desk, hadn't quite made it yet, had one more stop, I got pulled off the floor by some lobbyists for the NRA, National Rifle Association. And they said, Senator Justice, they said, you got to help us stop this bill. And I'm just looking at them like, what are you talking about? And they said, we don't want this bill to pass. I'm like, well, what part don't you want to pass? And they said, well, we don't like any of it. And I said, well, why don't you talk to some of your friends that are the ones pushing this and ask them, and they said, we can't, they won't listen to us anymore, they won't stop it. And I just looked at them, I said, you know what? You created this monster, Dr. Frankenstein. This is your problem now. Here's the problem, though. So this bill, as many of you know, nullifies federal gun laws, and it even makes it a criminal offense for federal employees to enforce gun laws in the state of Missouri. So ATF, FBI agent comes in, they need to make an arrest for a federal gun law, and I guess that means our state troopers are going to have to arrest the federal guys. This is the first step to seceding from the Union. Okay, it's incredibly unconstitutional. We cannot do that. And so what's the end result going to be? We're going to have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to fight this thing in court because someone's going to sue, And whoever sues is going to win, and then guess what? We have to pay their attorney's fees, which makes me as a lawyer just want to quit this whole thing and go become a lawyer to sue the state of Missouri every time they pass an unconstitutional bill so I can get my big fat plaintiff's fees at the end. This is wasting taxpayer dollars. It's not just dangerous, it's not just stupid, it's not just a news story. It's costing us hundreds of thousands of dollars that we could be spending on things like healthcare and roads and schools. And so to answer your question and to talk a little bit about what we've all just discussed here, we have to get this word out. And one way we're doing it, thankfully, is through groups like the Jackson County Democratic Committee, who are doing a great job with social media, helping getting the word out about all of this nonsense. And they're working closely with groups like Progress Missouri and other groups that are doing a good job of getting earned media and making sure that this isn't just stuff that we're tweeting about from the trenches, but it's showing up in the Kansas City Star and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and all across the state. And so it's taking a little bit of time because the Republicans have been doing this a lot longer than we have, this coordinated effort to get our message out. But we're getting better at it, and we need everybody's help here to keep moving that forward.
Just one question.
Yeah.
Your friends in the Democratic, will they make a statement against it?
No.
Okay, I just thought maybe somebody has some guts. But.
These guys don't listen, that's the problem. You talk to my state senator, he just looks at you, it's like, okay, what you think? He's gonna do it anyway.
There's no compassion on the Republican side down here, especially in the House. They don't even respect the Democratic representatives. One of us can stand up on the floor for an hour and they will not call on us because they don't want us to talk. So there's no compassion. They have no love for fellow men.
So these guys, when they're running against a Democrat, can a Democrat say, I'm running against so-and-so, bought and paid for by? Can you do that? Is that unethical?
I mean, can you say whatever you want?
Can we identify these guys and just, if it's continuous, like there's a way?
Weren't nullification laws started the Civil War?
To be honest, I don't know. I think it'd be more effective to answer your question, to put the information out. I don't have to sit here and say that Alex is behind voter ID bills, but I can pull up all the states that have the exact same bill that's been introduced, and that draws a distinction.
Right.
It's 2013. We haven't had any voter fraud at the polls since 1938. Where did this bill come from? The same when you talk about the gun bill. You see different states that have similar legislation that's unconstitutional that's being passed by their state reps. And all you have to do is put the information out there. That's one thing I would like to work more with the county party and the Democratic Party as a whole, is making sure we have our messaging out there when we actually putting out information. It's one thing to expose the wizard behind the sheep, but if you know that there's no such thing as magic, I don't even have to expose it, because you know whoever's back there playing is non-existent. And it's the same thing on the House. I've actually been blessed when I get up, I get called on fairly quick about being a double minority in the House. But I do know as Democrats, we have a hard time getting the message out, but we also have a hard time organizing. I'm not talking about the senators, because they're in a whole different chamber. But in the House, we have a hard time organizing around bills and crafting a message that we know we're going to put out there, as opposed to I'm against it or you against it. What is the factual things that I can get the Republicans on board with? Because a lot of these Republicans that vote for it, if you ask them why they voted for it, they couldn't tell you. And if you give them a reason not to vote for it, even though they're afraid of people running against them, you can't vote for 1 and 1 and 65 if you know we're going to put that you voted for 65. And we don't do that. We let Republicans and Democrats vote on bills that we know are going to be overtly harmful. And we hope that it doesn't get passed. Or we hope that Nixon vetoes it. Or we hope that it goes by quietly. And I think we need to just start putting the facts out there, and people will be exposed just by the misdeeds that they do.
I agree with you. However, I work for Congress and I get all kinds of wonderful phone calls. And the public drink the poop. They believe all these talking heads. It's amazing. And you almost have to do one-on-one. That's why you almost have to do something very simplistic that they keep singing over and over and over and over
Well,
again.
I agree with you. When we listen to the talk head, it looks like we listen to a Rush Limbaugh. All day long, he comes on there and he says, universal health care is bad. Universal health care is going to cost X amount of Z dollars. But we don't have no universal message that comes out and it says, well, it's 2,000 people in this area of rural Missouri. It's 36,000 people in this area of rural Missouri. It's 250,000 people in Kansas City and St. Louis that are going to benefit immediately by not having universal health care. That takes away everything. I don't care if I'm Republican or not. I know that I'm not going to have it. Or the same when we talk about the fiscal implications of the bill. When we talk about not having the tax cut, we talk about doing the tax cut for everybody that equals up to $900 million. All right, well, if we can give away $900 million, why can't we do something as simple as pay $800 million and insure everybody in the state of Missouri? That would kind of get you thinking about, why am I cutting taxes and I can't even take my child to the doctor? Would it be more beneficial for me to pay the current tax rate that I'm paying and be able to go to the doctor for free?
So I actually wanted to talk about that because we're beginning to get a lot of calls about the Affordable Care Act and whether or not there's anyone that people can talk to in the state of Missouri about these healthcare exchanges. We talked a little bit about that.
Well, can I just say something? If you go on the web, there's a kind number, and they can actually talk to somebody about their specific issues.
And I have given that information out, but they want to know why they can't do it here.
There is. There's, Gail, you know that is it the Healthcare Foundation of Kansas City, I think. And we got some numbers. I don't know.
Can we all walk in representative?
Yes,
I do apologize for being late.
The expansion didn't even get out. They didn't even do this Medicaid expansion.
It didn't get out.
Well, we offered it up on the floor a few times.
Right. We had about a 3-minute discussion on it.
So is their objective just to waste a lot of state dollars so that they can then say we don't have any money to help anybody? Because when they passed that bill, they had to know that it was federally, unconstitutional to pass that gun law. They had to know that that was unconstitutional. They're not that stupid. Okay, so if you pass a bill that you deliberately know that's unconstitutional, is your objective just to waste the state revenues, to take up time, to appear to be doing something when you're really not? What is their objective?
First of all, they don't care that it's unconstitutional.
Yeah.
They know.
Okay.
They know it's unconstitutional. I have stood on the floor with a copy of the Constitution in my
And you're a
hands
lawyer.
and read from it and then sat down and had very reasonable people say to me, oh, there you go with your common sense constitutional arguments again. They don't care. Because here's the deal. They think that the only thing that's going to get them reelected is this endorsement by the National Rifle Association or Missouri Right to Life or whatever insert, thing here. And the reality is, and this is the part where I want to say all hope is not lost, because I think Missouri is finally starting to shift. And I think we are now bouncing back. And with the work of the House Democratic Campaign Committee and the work that Paul's going to do on the Senate Democratic Campaign Committee, we're going to start crawling out of this hole. And we're going to start doing it because this extremism is being exposed and people are getting sick of it. And so finally, all of these rural folks who've been voting against their best interests for years now are starting to get fed up. And they want to know why, my guy, he's good on guns, which I love, and he's good on, this pro-life stuff, which I love, but he's keeping my kid from being on health insurance. And he cut the battery out of my mother's wheelchair. And they're starting to get it, that elections have consequences, and it's taken a while.
Well, I think they've had to suffer and feel it.
We had someone in the back who was...
Well, I just wanted to go back to the discussion about healthcare. On October 1, the general public will be able to start signing up for the healthcare. They can find out more about the exchanges and decide on what level. Silver level, platinum, gold, and I think there's another level. And all those levels will be income-based. And for those people who make a higher income or lower income, there'll be sliding scale fee for those people. But more importantly, there are going to be what we call outlets all over the state where people can go and sign up. I don't know where they're going to be. I'm hoping that they're going to be in urban communities as well as rural and other communities where people can go sign up for the exchanges and find out more. And there they'll get all the information they need about the steps that they need to take to sign up and all about identification or whatever they need. Those persons will be able to provide it. And may I suggest that you go to Enroll Missouri online. They're thorough. I mean, everything you want to know about how to sign up and exchanges is there. And I like it because it's very simple to understand. The language is very easy and it's a wonderful site. So may I recommend that to anyone who hasn't visited that site already.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Also, just this weekend, we had Missouri Foundation for Health come and talk to us. Unfortunately, they are not in the Kansas City area, but we are working on getting the contact in the Kansas City area. But they are also putting together documentation that makes it very simple and very easy. And we are going to be, I know my office is going to order some information so that we'll have for anyone who needs it that we can give out. There is some question about how much information we can provide the public, because there is a little law out there that says we can't promote the exchange.
This is one that the legislature's passed.
So there is a question. Now, our argument is we have a responsibility to our constituents, and that falls under constituent assistance, and therefore we should be able to do that. But there is some question as to how far we can actually go with
Well,
that.
actually, if you're telling them only where to go to sign up, that's all you're doing.
Right.
You're not telling them that this is a good program to sign up for or it's a bad program. You're just telling them where.
Right.
So that's all. That will not be violating you.
And that goes to the nature of what the radicals in Jefferson City have done. They've passed this. They made it hard for some state officials to advance. They won't pass a Missouri exchange, so we have to use the federal one, which makes it a little more complicated for us and the state government to focus on it. And then they won't expand Medicaid to get the benefit of the money from the ACA or Obamacare. So they're setting up these hurdles and then stepping back and saying, Obamacare didn't work. Well, of course. If you didn't take the money to cover the people, if you didn't give them the opportunity to go to the exchange, and you didn't educate them to have the coverage, which helps small businesses not have to cover, which helps hospitals so they don't go in the emergency room, it isn't going to work. So that's their game a little bit too, is to try to set up these barriers to prove the president wrong. And they're not. If they let it work, if it doesn't work, we could try to fix it, but they have no solutions there.
And what the senator said is important for people to understand that when you hear universal health care or Obamacare, you're talking about the federal level. We don't have it at the state. We didn't pass the exchange last year, which is what, $63 million or something like that. There's a lot of $1 million that we gave away. Didn't do anything this year. Be surprised if we do anything next year about it. So we're constantly losing out on benefits that the citizens would get, and then it puts your state representatives and your legislators in a predicament because we're not at the federal government level. So now I have no real leverage to be able to help out on anything that would be beneficial to my citizens. Yeah.
Okay, so my question is, what can we do? What can you provide us that, as a Democratic committee person, that I could go door to door with a leaflet, or I can do a mail out, or, it's too expensive to do it humongous. But sometimes grassroots really does work. I think we all know that. And maybe this is what we need, is information that is to the point, very simplistic, endorsed by the Democrats, and it doesn't even have to be on here, because they don't say who's given them their information. We can make it from your committee, but we don't even have to identify who's a
Well,
participant. We can just
okay,
say,
the information that I'm gonna get from the Missouri Foundation for Health, I can get as much as I want and it doesn't cost. So if that's what people want, I will make sure I get enough and get it to the committee people so that they can distribute it.
but that information is important, but what you just said on what we're losing out,
Okay.
that has to be in there. I mean, it's not enough to say, here's the information. You've got to say, because this was voted out, because this was voted out. And then how do you find out who voted for it and who voted against it? Just go to your, put the voting record on there, whatever. But I think we don't do enough grassroots, and that's what I think we're going to do.
Yeah, kind of in the realm of just basic literature on the Affordable Care. You go to marketplace.cms.gov, they have a bunch of like brochures that you can print out. They're not going to necessarily say, oh, this is what the rate is missing out or anything like that. Just go to the facts. This is what you need when you go sign up. This is where you can sign up. The importance of health care.
But I still think that information is very good. I do think we have to use it as a political tool.
There is a group that's launching right now that I think probably is going to do a little bit more of what you're talking about. It's called covermissouri.org, and that's going to have a little more of the policy side on it. And these are the folks that are going to be trying to get Medicaid expanded to educate folks about what's happening. And so you can go to covermissouri.org. And another thing that I would suggest, if you haven't done so already, is everyone here familiar with Progress Missouri? Progress Missouri is an organization that aggregates a lot of media across the state, and just their simple email that they send out every day at 5 o'clock is really helpful, because it talks about issues that are important to those of us that are organizing in the Democratic community. And I think it really gives you a lot of up-to-the-minute information. They help get the word out. A lot of times when people say, how can I get more information? The Star's not covering it. And of course, as we all know, the poor little Star is this big now. Even if we've got some great reporters and they aren't even given any space to write anymore. And so if you want more, you've got to go statewide, and this is one of those places to go for that. The name of the latest coalition working on the healthcare stuff is covermissouri.org. And then the other one is Progress Missouri. ProgressMissouri.org. Does anyone have any questions? We've talked a lot about taxes and guns. What other things? Yeah.
First of all, I want to thank you guys for the work you did this year. I know you're up against a lot. I live in Raymore, so I'm in Bradley's district, so yeah, that's
Sorry.
And then we're a senator, so. What has the most impact? Phone calls, emails, or handwritten letters? When I tell my members, because I'm a president of a small local, to contact you about upholding, or contacting the Republicans mostly, about upholding the veto, especially on 253, because I stuck that one a lot. I don't even think you guys really got into the effect it will have on mental health. Yeah, and I've got a lot of members that have kids that have autism, so that's kind of devastating.
Yeah.
I think phone calls at this point are the most effective. What do you guys think?
I would say for veto, phone calls and emails, but if you can, take a trip up there. This year we had a bill, the union bill, that would stop the unions from donating fees and all that stuff. Well, so many people from the union came up there, the Senate stayed in, but the House, they dismissed. All the Republicans literally left. Oh, that was Medicaid, excuse me. Well, I know the union people was over there.
That was Medicaid. They literally locked their doors and left.
Yeah, it's because that was Medicaid.
Yeah, we made about 10 trips up there this year. So.
I would really recommend that you get people to contact their own representative and they put their address somehow when they contact them. As opposed to just John Smith, I don't know who that is. John Smith who lives on Avon. Oh, I live on Avon. And if you're thinking, well, I need to talk to someone outside my area, you see some other CWA members and have them contact because it's a lot more impactful. Well, at least for me. I look at my constituents and what they say first, and because you get them. I mean, we get a daily one from this terrible situation in St. Louis. I think in St. Louis County with the nuclear waste, but we get them every day. The emails in the Senate, but it's like, I like to hear from my own constituents.
Yeah, Paul's absolutely right there. And I think it's important that if you make calls or if you send letters, then make sure, like he said, make sure you put your address on there. But it is funny because I think years ago, before everyone was, did email, it was better than to send email instead of letters or calls because then you got so many calls. But now we get so many emails. I mean, we can get literally 1,000 emails a day. If you're wanting them to see the email in enough time potentially for the bill, especially if it's right before, don't email. Make sure you call. But I think calls, I agree with Jolie, is probably the most effective way probably right now if you want it to be seen or heard and make sure you leave your address.
The only thing, sometimes I've called and their mailbox is full, especially since you're out of session right now, and they'll say mailbox is full, and it's like.
Then I would sign on to the email, and because when you sign on to the email system, you have to plug in your address and your zip code.
I do that.
Yeah, and it seems like a lost cause. I get it, but just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it.
I used to have a Republican state rep that I sent a postcard to that just said, "I'm watching how we vote." I have a Democratic state rep now, so I don't have to worry about that, but because I wanted to make sure that it got seen and it's different.
I got one thing for housekeeping. Representative Judy Morgan is at a equal rights meeting tonight. She apologized for not being here, but she said that's where she was at.
I'm sorry, one more question. What is the plan for the veto session? What are you having people go down? What is there a plan?
Well, I don't know what you mean. We'll be there.
I know we need the public to be there. Does that do any good at a veto session? What do we do if we go down and lobby?
I mean, you can always go down and lobby. The reality is that most of the lobbying needs to be done right now. And it needs to be done on the Republican legislators in the House that are on the fence or who are shaky. And their own constituents need to contact them and tell them not to override this veto. That's what has to be done right now. Folks in the back.
Other than the tax bill and the gun bill, what other bills do you think are in danger of being overridden?
The only other one that's being, well, first of all, Tim Jones, Speaker of the House, said they're going to take a run at all of them.
Yeah, I heard that.
So I think anything's on the table. I think there's one bill that a lot of people are kind of torn on. It's House Bill 650. A lot of it's referred to as the Doe Run bill. This is a bill that would cap punitive damages for injuries to individuals who were exposed to lead in southeast Missouri. It's kind of a tough one because there are several Democrats that are in favor of the bill because obviously Doe Run's a big employer down there. You've got the jobs perspective, and it's important to the state. The lead industry is important to the state. At the same time, you've got folks who are concerned about individuals who've been harmed, and this is a very serious thing to be capping the amount retroactively of what these are for cases that are ongoing right now, not future cases too, but cases that are already in the works. Capping what they could get for damage that has been done to them is a very scary idea, and so I think that's one that they could take a run at.
In the House, I'm glad the Senator brought that one up. In the House, that's one of the bills that they actually been talking about. Excuse me, I didn't have allergies to my voice as long. Is that Doe Run bill? I'm against the Doe Run bill. Matter of fact, I would be against any bill that tries to cap damages that an individual seeks, because I believe that corporations and large entities get away daily victimizing and getting over on people knowingly. And I don't believe that I should cap anybody's injuries when a company is going to make millions or billions of dollars. and the don't run is just another example. The senator was actually moved dead on because I believe it's a lead factory in Missouri and a couple of people's districts. They got them a little nervous. But how can you side on the side of somebody that's not going to suffer and is just going to continue to reap rewards off of other people's pain? So I think this is an easy one to sustain the veto. I think y'all should definitely call y'all state reps and other state reps, Democrats and Republicans, to make sure we don't overturn this one. It's the same with the workforce discrimination bill and the other discrimination bill that we're trying to push out because we're saying it'd be better for businesses in Missouri. But we know it would be harmful for citizens. The other bill I'm talking about is the one that takes motivating factor and discrimination, where it doesn't have to be a contributing factor, it has to be a motivating factor, which is something you can't prove.
Real quick on the Doe Run piece, there is a portion of Union that is supporting the override for Doe Run. I will tell you, Doe Run came to speak to the House Democrats and basically put their foot in their mouth. The question was, do you support labor? And currently, they are not using labor workforce right now. When we asked, will you use labor, we got a roundabout answer. And then, will you be supporting right to work? We got another roundabout answer, to the point they realized they screwed up so badly that when they left, they went back to their offices, wrote a letter, put a sentence on it that said we would not support right to work, and then had it delivered to us.
So
there's no guarantee that they're going to use labor.
And I'm a member of the building trades. I'm voting no. I didn't like what the Run people said. I thought they were lying out of both sides.
And I will tell you, some of the stuff was so egregious to the point they were selling that byproduct as sand for children's playgrounds. Okay? So they knew what they were doing. They knew it was bad, and they knew they were harming people. And I just have a real problem with supporting that.
Yep. I have a quick question for Senator Justice. You said we need to call some of the Republicans. Can you be more specific on who needs to be called?
Well, it's all on the House side. Because the Senate side, it's not, it's a lost cause.
Noel Torpy?
Noel Torpy would be one.
Myron Neff.
Myron Neff. TJ Berry, but it's his bill, so he's not going to change his mind.
So then can we have a review then, or whoever the person that coordinate that, on the definitive list of the people that we call? Then number 2, can we have like the top 10 bills in your opinion that we need, to call?
What the Jackson County Democratic Committee will do, we'll get a list. If each of you can kind of send me a list of the top 10 and also any state representatives that you think are on the fence, we'll get that list out on our website, our Facebook, and our email system.
I just want to echo what's already been said by Senator Lamotta and others. It's incumbent upon us to reach out to our friends that live in Liberty to make sure that they're contacting Myron Neff, because Myron Neff doesn't care what I think. I live in Ira Andrews' district. Right. So we have to really make sure we're contacting our friends and family and saying, hey, you need to call this guy, he represents you, and this is what he thinks is good for Missouri.
And Tom, I would suggest that you contact Roy Temple and the party and get that from them.
Okay.
Because they're the HQ for this. And I mean, each one of us could spout off a couple of state reps that we think would be helpful, but the reality is that the coordinated efforts are coming out of the governor's office and out of the state party.
Sir, you got it.
First of all, I'd like to thank Senator Justice for appointing me to the CAP panel at the Bannersford Federal Weapons Complex. And we had an issue down to the state, MNDR, the repurposing of the old plant out here. Just like people are concerned about the lead in southeastern Missouri, and people are concerned about the nuclear waste that's spraying of the ghettos and the slum dwellers, we are concerned in Kansas City with the repurposing of that nuclear weapons plant, which no one seems to know anything about what's buried on the place. The place was a nuclear, it was a landfill for the Atomic Energy Commission first designated, not a plant. The first designation was a landfill for the Atomic Energy Commission. So it's some things went on out there that we're not being told. Now, we're concerned with that. We're also concerned with the support that we need for what we call a SEC, Special Exposure Cohort. And what the Special Exposure Cohort does is a presidential act. It was presidential order, President Clinton enacted in 2000 to cover 22 cancers of people that worked at the site, where they are automatically compensated, their medical benefits are paid to them, and even their survivors. Because the date that we're covering is 1949 to 1993. And we're concerned in Missouri, and the people in Kansas City, that we're not getting support from the state, the federal representatives to take care of the people out there that are sick and dying and have died. The news, if you read the presidential order, the United States government has admitted, like they did in St. Louis, that they sprayed the ghettos, the slum dwellers, with nuclear elements, also chemical and biological elements. Well, they've admitted the same at Honeywell. Unknown to the people. Unknown to the people. So we're looking for support from the state legislators, and we want you to look into what MNDR is doing, repurposing that plant. We already opened a daycare out there on contaminated soil, which they admitted. The daycare is still functioning on contaminated soil. So things are getting pretty ugly, and with the SEC that has been qualified, we have qualified the SEC, and we will be having a presidential advisory board come into town the first of the year. So it's going to get ugly, and we want our state representatives and state senators to be up on that, so that there's no embarrassment as to what's going on. You ought to know what's under that ground out there. You ought to know what's going on in the water system. I was out at McDonald's the other day on 85th Street, and they told me not to drink the water. I said, why? This is coming from the tap. They said, well, it's a long story. They wouldn't tell me. Well, I worked out there for 32 years. I used to put signs on the water fountain that says, do not drink the water until it clears up. So if we're back in that state again, who knows what's going on? Check into it. It's going to be very ugly. I want my people to know about it.
Thank you. We'll check into that.
Support. Letters have been sent out asking for support from our SEC. I want to talk to the federal and state legislators. Give us your support. I know you care about the people just like the lead folks down in Southeast. You care about the people in Kansas City. They're dying every day. Rare cancers that aren't so rare to that complex.
Thank you very much. I want to first thank everyone for coming. I want to thank our state representatives and state senators. We had a late arrival, John Mayfield from Independence. Anybody from his district, you know how hard he's worked and how hard he worked to get here. But I first want to recognize any member of the Jackson County Democratic Committees here. Could you raise your hand? Thank you very much for coming. We'll ask maybe a couple more questions and then we're going to wrap this up. Again, we'll have as much information on our website, our Facebook page, and our email system in the next couple of days to give you the names of those state representatives. And as Jessica pointed out, you know, I can call my state representative or I can call somebody else from another district. We need your friends, your neighbors, your relatives, even contact some of your enemies who may live in someplace, but get them to call their state representatives because it's important issues we're dealing here. I know 253 is going to have an impact on a lot of people if it gets overridden. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming and giving us your time tonight. Let's give them a round of applause. We have a couple more questions, and then we've got to wrap this up. Any more questions? Okay.
253, I keep hearing the school district talk about it, and healthcare. We do have lots of groups around here that provide care for the developmentally disabled adults. Is it going to cut all those group homes?
Yes.
Yes. It's just money straight out of
straight out of general revenue.
Yeah, it shutters, I think, 5 of the 7 state hospitals and cuts 100 beds from 2 of the remaining ones and moves them all to the St. Louis side, if I'm not mistaken. And that comes from the Missouri Department of Health.
So how do they just take the percentage of the budget? Is that how
Yeah, well, we won't have a budget.
Yeah.
It really is $800 million. It just will.
It'll wipe it out.
I have a question, because I heard someone say something about closing prisons. Could you kind of restate what that was? Because my concern is...
No, we won't be closing the prisons. I was saying that the $800 million that would be considered in a tax cut would be the equivalent of us having to close our prisons. We are not closing. Yes,
And one thing I'd like to throw out there, if you have friends, colleagues, coworkers, family members in rural areas, one other thing that's wrong with this bill is this tax cut doesn't include farmers.
That's right.
So if you receive your income as a self-employed ag person, you don't get a cut. Same with if you receive your income as a landlord. It doesn't include those folks who get their income through property ownership. So if you're trying to attack this from several different angles, including that it's not going to be a deep enough tax cut, talk to the farmers and tell them it doesn't cover them.
Are the investment bankers going to get taken care of?
If they are LLCs, yeah, they'll be fine. It's really for lobbyists and lawyers and accountants. They're the ones who get off the best. So.
All right.
Can I add something?
Go ahead.
I think, since we're Jackson County Democrats, I think this needs to be pointed out. Everyone should be extremely proud of the leadership that we have. We have in the Senate the minority leader and the assistant minority leader right here from Jackson County fighting the good fight every day. In the House, we have the assistant minority leader right here fighting the good fight. Our statewide, I don't care where Senator McCaskill or Secretary of State Kander have moved to. We know they're Jackson County people.
That's right.
And our Attorney General is close enough from Cass County that we can claim him ourselves too. And additionally, our new chairman of our party lives in Lee Summit now. He's moved to Jackson County. So, we should be very proud of our
SDCC to get more Democrats elected.
Right, and our tradition of Jackson County Democrats leading the way is still there, even though we're outnumbered. We're still trying to fight the good fight, and I hope that you guys realize that. We have leadership right here in the room that just do an amazing job under really tough circumstances. So make sure you tell Jolie and Gail that they're
and
great.
Paul is doing amazing in the Senate with us. We're so thankful. And I just want to run one quick thing past you. We talk a lot about these nullification laws and all these unconstitutional things that they're doing and trying to secede from the union. Is it okay with you guys here in Jackson County if next time they do that, we just try to get Jackson County to secede from Missouri?
If you haven't, I wanted to remind you, if you haven't signed the petition, we have a petition on 253 back on the table. It's online. If you haven't signed it here, sign it, or get your friends to go on our website and sign it there. We're going to deliver it to, the people before the veto session. So.
Yeah. I want to give it to Paul so he has it when he heads back down to Jefferson City and he can say, look at all of these people from around the state of Missouri that think this is a bad bill. I want to be able to give it to him. Yeah.
Every single name.
All right, thank you very much for coming out tonight. And again, thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come. We appreciate it.